Hey, what's going on? Greene here with Impactful Pastors. And for those of you that are new to the channel, what I do is I take the knowledge I've gained as an entrepreneur, building multiple six-figure a year business, and I help pastors turn a struggling church into a healthy, growing church. So what I want to talk about in this video is how I started even working with pastors. It's a question that I get all the time. It's like, all right, D, what's your story? How did you end up working with pastors? So that's what I want to talk about in this video. It's a little bit bright right here, but I'm actually in Medellin, Colombia. So I'm just gonna take you guys on a walk with me and just kind of explain my story. It actually wasn't something that I planned to do, and it's not even something that I went into purposefully. Like, there's a lot of people that sit around and they're thinking like, what's my niche? Who can I help? Who can I serve? And they come up with that plan, and then that's, you know, the type of people that they help. That was not actually my story. So to go way back, I started as an entrepreneur when I was young, when I was in like high school, and when I was in college, I started a Christian clothing brand. And the first week was crazy, sold out like immediately. And after that, I was like, man, in order to really grow a successful company, I'm gonna have to learn marketing. I'm gonna have to learn social media, all these tools, and to be able to get my name and to get my brand out. And that's where I pretty much like started. I was like, man, in order to get this out to more people, I'm gonna have to figure out how to market. From there, I ended up moving to Orlando. And while I was there, I was always just like, man, I don't want to have like a job. And not just because I hated a job, but I felt like I had like a bigger calling on my life that God wanted me to fulfill, that God, you know, had for my life, a bigger impact that I could make, rather than just having a job where I'm there every day and not doing much else. But what happened was I couldn't find a job with my degree, and I just ended up doing like Uber. I was working at Disney making like $8 an hour or whatever. I was working at Tommy Bahama, this clothing store, making like $8 an hour, and I just really wasn't getting where I wanted to go. And I was getting frustrated because I'm like, I know I'm smart, see other people doing what they want to do with their calling, but I just don't know how to achieve mine. And eventually what happened was somebody ended up contacting me. It was actually one of my family members, and they were like, hey, we're doing some things with our marketing. We're going to switch our team around, and we wanted to know if you could come and do some of the things our previous marketing company was doing. So I was like, all right, let me see. We set up the meeting, and I ended up working with them. I ended up getting a job for my cousin at his law firm, and I was helping him get more clients to his law firm through social media, through marketing. And then I ran into this guy, Ty Lopez, not personally, online, and I ended up taking one of his programs that he had at the time. It's funny because the program was like $1,000. I couldn't afford it at the time. I asked my cousin, like, hey, let me buy this program. This is really gonna help us grow and help me get you results. And he was like, no way. So one time I was on a live with Ty Lopez while I was on one of his lives, and there's a whole bunch of people complaining about how expensive it was. And I was like, look, there's so many people on here. Why don't we all just pitch in? And what happened was we ended up getting a group of us together, and and then we all went in on like the program together. So that's how I got in. And basically that opened my eyes up to the fact that you don't have to just work for one company. You can create a company, and then companies can hire your company to do the marketing for them. So that's what I did. I started a marketing agency, and I started working for other entrepreneurs like in the area, or I started having like, you know, I was working for like stem cell doctors. I had like restaurants. I had physical therapists. I had, you name it. Like, I was just really helping people with their marketing. And I just went down this trail of like, hey, I really need to become good at marketing and helping people get their name out there. And at the same time, I still kind of felt like, you know, yeah, I don't have to go work somewhere and I have freedom, but at the same time, I'm not fulfilling like my calling, because like they still basically telling me what to do, and I still have to log into all their accounts, and it was still like a lot of work. So at the same time, what I was doing is I was focusing on like, how can I use, you know, my podcast, my Instagram, my Facebook to make a positive impact. And mind you, like I said, I had already had like the Christian clothing brand. So I was already in the mindset of like, hey, I need to make an impact. I need to make a difference. So I was always using my platforms to try to make a difference. So walk over here. This is Medellin, Colombia. Been here about 2 months, but it's just a beautiful city. If you've never been here, definitely worth going. But so I was always using my platforms to try to like make a difference, attract more people to the kingdom, and just, you know, live a life of positivity, because that's what Ty Lopez had did for me. Changed my life. I went from, you know, just being into rap music to now I'm reading books about mindset, I'm learning about finances, I'm learning about money, I'm learning about business, and it completely changed my life. So in 2020, I was like, man, I don't want to have to work for people one-on-one anymore. What I want to do is I want to have some type of course where I can show them what to do, they get in, and I can help more people. So I was trying to do that. I remember what was crazy is I felt like the Lord was calling me to live in downtown Orlando. I was already living in Orlando, but I was like, man, God's calling me maybe to live in Orlando, downtown Orlando. So I went to go looking for places, and we ended up finding a place that was like $600 or $700 more than where we were currently staying, but they're like, we'll give you 2 months free of the rent if you go ahead and sign now. So I was like, all right, you know, we did it. And I was like, man, we had these 2 months to figure it out. So I was on go mode. I was like, I gotta figure this out. I was literally trying to do everything I possibly could to figure out like what it was I was gonna do in the world to make an impact. And I had started like a book club. It was like $5 a month. And like I was trying to do all these things, and it was like nothing was working. Time was running out, and then COVID happened, and my wife didn't have a job, and like we basically had no money, and we were trying to figure out what we were gonna do to pay the rent and everything. It was crazy. So what ended up happening was I was doing like a podcast when the pandemic hit, and I would just get random people, entrepreneurs on there to tell their story on my podcast. And one of my guests was like, you should check out this guy called Dan Henry. He really helps people with their businesses and online businesses. So I bought his book. He had like a little challenge. I tried the challenge, still nothing was working. And I was like, man, he kept saying, if you get stuck, call my team, call my team, call my team. So I got on the phone with his team. Long story short, for this part, they ended up, you know, asking me what I need help with. We ended up talking about it, and they said, we can help you, but it's going to be $10,000. I immediately, of course, was like, bro, like, I don't have that money. Like, I cannot do that. Like, I went into this, you know, small mindset, and that's a mindset I see a lot of pastors go into when they talk to me and I tell them our prices. So I can definitely relate to that feeling. But I also was like, what else am I gonna do? Like, am I just gonna stay stuck? Because I had already been trying so hard. And I was like, I don't wanna, I don't have the money, but I don't wanna go back to doing the same things that I was doing that just wasn't working. And it wasn't working at all. So I was like, what options do you have? And we ended up working out an option where I could use some mix of credit, PayPal credit, credit cards, like all this different type of stuff. I ended up getting into the program, and what I was gonna do is I was gonna create a program. I was gonna create an online course on helping entrepreneurs like build their business with social media. And one of the things that we're supposed to do in the course to get started was find Facebook groups and share tips. Well, I was just searching social media, different tips and different platforms. And so what I did was I found this Facebook group that was like church social media managers. And one day I just felt God calling me to like share some tips, because everything that I was seeing in that group up until then was just terrible. It was like the worst tips for churches. And I just shared like a live video, and it just went crazy. And so many pastors were messaging me. They're like, how can we send you money? How can we pay you for this? Like, what services do you offer? Can we do a consultation call? And I'm like, I don't even work with churches. Now, to go back a little bit more, I've always been in church. You have pictures of me as a baby in church. I've always went to church. I was always really close with my pastors. They would come to my house when I was in college. I was really close with my pastor. When I was in Orlando, I was close with my pastor. I would go to his house, we would talk. I got married at one of my pastor's houses. So I've always been involved with church. And like I said, I had Christian clothing lines. I did Christian rap, all that type of stuff. So it wasn't like, it was new to me, but it wasn't something I was focusing on or wanting to do. And part of it was just, I was like, churches don't listen. Like, I'd already tried telling my pastors like, hey, like, you should use social media. These are some tips and tricks and tools that you could use to reach more people. And not just about reaching people for the sake of reaching people, but to make an impact on more people, just like I'm doing. And they never listened. And I was like, if these are my friends and they don't listen, how am I going to get random pastors to listen? But what I realized was COVID had opened up so many churches' eyes, like, hey, this is something that we have to do. So a lot of churches were messaging me, reaching out to me. And the issue I was having with my business and working with entrepreneurs is I was like, hey, social media isn't just about sales. You can't just be advertising. What you have to do is you have to focus on your user, on your audience, on the customer, provide them with so much value that they build a connection, and then from there you get the sale. But they were just like, that's not something that we want to do. That's not something that we want to focus on. So what ended up happening was it was just like really difficult to get them to buy in to that. So you can like cut this part. So when all the entrepreneurs I was working with, it was like difficult to get them to buy into that idea. But when the pastor started hitting me up, I was like, hey, this is great because they have to do this. Like, you can't just say, hey, tithe to our church if you have no relationship, and it's hard for you to get people to come in if you don't have a relationship. So I was like, hey, I told my wife, I was like, man, this is crazy, because I had just invested like the 10,000. We had spent like a month figuring out my program, what exactly I was going to do, and now I'm like, I'm going to change it, I'm going to switch it. And it was all a lot of unknown territory, and just a lot of uncertainty. But I was like, I just had that faith, and I just felt like that was where God was calling me to do. So I prayed about it, asked my wife, asked my uncle, and I was just like, if this is something God's calling me to do, I don't want to delay. I don't want to be like, well, what if, or ask any questions, and I don't want to wait till next month, next week, tomorrow. This is something I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start doing it now. So I literally got rid of everything. I was making music, I was producing music. I put all that stuff up, put it all in the closet. All the stuff I was doing for entrepreneurs, changed the name to churches, got rid of all that stuff, and I just focused solely on churches. And what I was doing at first was I was helping churches increase their online presence. So we were just focusing on social media, like how can they become more known on social media? How can they get better at Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all this type of stuff. And so that was the first thing I did. And as I started to do that more and more, I just started to realize one of the things that holds pastors back is their team. If their team is not doing the work, then they don't get to succeed. And if they have a great team, but if that team moves, graduates, gets married, whatever happens, that puts them in a vulnerable spot, and they're not able to get the results that they're looking for, and they're not able to achieve that growth. And I started looking at what I was doing in my business, and I was like, yeah, I have a team for certain things, but there's certain things I know how to do. That way I can always get growth, and I'm never stuck on someone else. I'm never dependent. Yeah, I might have a sales team. I might have people that edit content. I might have these other things. But if I ever get stuck, like, I can do it too. And so I started taking what was working for me to create a business that was doing, over 6 figures a year. I said, how can I apply some of that to what pastors are experiencing with a struggling church? And I'm like, we feel the same way. I used to feel like I wasn't fulfilling my calling because I couldn't get a business started, because I had no customers. I had, it was nothing, and people kept telling me to give up or go find a job. I'm like, that's the same thing with a pastor with a struggling church, is they feel like, hey, is this really meant for me? Is this really what God has called for my life? Is this really the direction I should go? And if this fails, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to go get a job. I'm gonna have to quit, but whatever, right? And so that's how I ended up now. Instead of just helping churches with their online presence, we help pastors turn a struggling church into a healthy, growing church. And so it's all about structure. It's not just about social media. We just use that as one of the tools. There's other things that we do to help pastors achieve that growth in a healthy way that's going to create more disciples, bring more people into the church, and just really create that environment that they need, and to really give them that foundation that they can build upon. And so that's really how I got into this. It wasn't something that I just sat around and I was like, hey, this is something that I want to do. It was really something that I feel like God kind of just, placed on my heart, something that I could relate with. And I think a lot of people would say, like, oh, I'm not qualified, like them themselves, like, oh, I've never been a pastor, I can't do this, I never helped churches. But I was just like, hey, if this is something that God is calling me to do, he's the only one that needs to qualify me, not anybody else. And so I was like, hey, this is something I'm gonna do. And I went all in, and I've been dedicated to it. So that's how I got started. People ask me this question all the time. So, like, I know maybe that's a long answer, not really, about 10-15 minute explanation. But now you kind of know it wasn't something that I just sat around and think about, something that God put on me, put on my heart. And it's not just something I'm doing for the money, and it's not just something I'm doing to help pastors just grow a church for no reason. To me, it's all about making an impact. If we're not making an impact, not making a difference, then what are we doing? We're just wasting time. Matthew 28:19-20, I believe, like God called, or Jesus, that's the Great Commission, like go out and make disciples of all nations. And to me, that's always been my duty. Even when I'm here in Colombia, I'm always like, how can I help someone? How can I give back? Like, we lived in Mexico for 5 months before this. It's like, how can I help? How can I give back? And I know in a modern world, sometimes it's hard for pastors to know how to do that. How do you reach people on social media? How do you find people? What do you do? How do you track millennials, Generation Z, all those different types of things? So that's what I want to help with and bring that entrepreneur mindset and spirit to it. So that's how I got started. Again, it wasn't just something that I just sat around and was like, I want to help churches. I want to make money off these pastors. This is something that God placed on my heart. And I was like, hey, if God can use me, I'm going to do it. It's kind of like Moses, right? You're not really built for it. You feel like you're unqualified, but God puts it on your heart and you just have to do it. So hope that helps you get a better understanding, like who I am, why I do this. I'll probably do more videos on this in the future, but I really wanted to touch on this today. But let's say if you're a pastor, right, and you're watching this video and you're like, hey, I have a struggling church. I've been struggling to make an impact. I don't know if I'm fulfilling my calling. And I want to, have a church that's growing, not just for the sake of numbers, but because I want to make a difference. I want to make a bigger impact, no matter what your story is. And you want to use your talents and the calling that God has placed upon your life to make a big difference in the world with your ministry, but you just don't know how. What I'll do is I'll leave a link below and you can book a call with me and my team, and we'll explain more about our program. We'll send you a PDF more about what we do, and we can see if it would be a good fit for you and your ministry. So no pressure, but for anybody that's watching this video that's like, hey, I can relate to that, I would love to see if you could help me. I'll leave that link below, and maybe if we work together, we work together. So wanted to share my story. I would inspire or I would encourage any of you guys out there to share your story as well. That's how we're going to connect with people. So if you're a pastor, start sharing your story on social media. Start letting people know where you came from and the things that you do. It's very, very important. It builds our relationship. So I want to share my story. Hope that helps. Again, that link is there for anybody that wants to work with me or wants to know more about our program. Love you guys. See you on the next one.